Welcome to On the Fly College Edition, a podcast presented by Playfly Sports. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo. Playfly Sports is the full-service marketing and media company bringing digitally enabled innovations to the sports industry. Welcome to this week's edition of On the Fly. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo, and our guest this week is the newly appointed and very, very talented Director of Athletics at Temple University, Arthur Johnson. Arthur, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Gene. I appreciate it. On the fly. I like that.
Yeah, on the fly. Yeah. You have an interesting background, Arthur. You graduated from Georgia. You've been in football. You've been around a lot of great people. Tell some of these young administrators out there about your career and how you found your way to Temple University.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on and giving me this opportunity to visit and kind of share my story. As you mentioned, I went to the University of Georgia. I had an opportunity to go to Athens from Thomasville, Georgia, which is a small town in southwest Georgia. I spent 8 years in Athens the first time. So it was a combination of undergrad, graduate school, and I started my career. So while at Georgia, I had an opportunity to work as a football student manager on Coach Vince Dooley's last team, and then stay there and then transition into graduate school and started working in event operations. And in event operations, it really gave me a great foundation and helped me understand, the support and the village that you need to really host events and to host games. So to host a football game in Sanford Stadium and to interact with so many internal and external stakeholders, it was kind of, overwhelming initially. And then you learn that, you just had to control what you could control and trust the people. So you learn very early on to trust people that work with you, because you cannot be in all areas of the stadium at the same time. So I left there while actually working for Georgia and ACOG, the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games. So
wow.
Georgia was awarded the Olympic Games back in 1992. Billy Payne, who's a Georgia graduate, former Georgia football letter winner, he and Coach Dooley and a contingent went over to Greece. I remember sitting there watching that announcement live on campus that Atlanta was going to be awarded the games. And what that meant was that obviously when games go to a city, it really goes to that entire region, and especially within the state. So with Athens being 65 miles from Atlanta, Mr. Payne's connections to Georgia. So for the first time ever, they were going to pull the famed Hedges out to host soccer, to use the Sanford Stadium as a soccer venue for the women. And then also we had a Coliseum. So that was another facility that they did not have to build. So we had rhythmic gymnastics and volleyball in there. So the Athens community was heavily involved. However, those of us in athletics knew that as soon as the season, or as soon as the Olympics were over, or because of the Olympics, we were not going to get a summer break. And you still had to get ready for the football season, which was very important. So the state allowed us to work 2 jobs at the same time, and we didn't get a summer, or they were not going to get a summer vacation. However, prior to that, I had an opportunity to go to Arizona State, and it was life-changing. It was a very tough decision at the time, not take part in the Olympics and leave that experience while we were in the middle of training and prepping for the games. Had met so many people, people from other countries who had come over to look at it. Members of the IOC came to Athens, but it was an opportunity to go to Arizona State. And I actually traded some messages with Miss Linda Snyder, who is the wife of the late Coach Bruce Snyder. Coach Bruce Snyder is an incredible man. He was a great role model. And when I sit here and I think about him accepting me and giving me an opportunity to leave the South for the first time ever, it's just one of those things that was part of God's plan because I did not have a connection there. But
Arthur, what year did you go out there?
that was 1996. That was the summer prior to the Olympics starting. So I went
Okay.
out in the hottest part of the year. So that was in June of 1996. And ironically, Dr. Kevin White and I were hired on the same day
Oh, wow.
in terms of starting on the same day. So we started at the same time, but I went out there. I did not know anyone there other than one friend. I did not know anyone on the staff. So it was just one of those things that happened. And I went out there and just went to work. And we were very fortunate. We had success. That was the year we went to the Rose Bowl and lost to Ohio State with Jake Plummer and that great team. And had great success there. I loved it. Still got a lot of friends who live in the Valley, got a lot of coaches that I work with there who are coaching at other places around the country. And I can get into how some of that has helped me along the way. But I was there for almost 3 years. At that time, I was engaged. My wife was in Atlanta finishing up graduate school. And an opportunity came up for me to go to the University of North Carolina. This was after Coach Brown had left, but obviously they had a lot of success. It was the second time I had gotten a call about going to North Carolina. The first time they had called in preseason camp at Arizona State. And at that time, I would not even entertain that discussion because all of the logistics of preparing for preseason camp, it would have been unfair for me to do that to Coach Snyder in Arizona State. So I did not even go interview or look at that opportunity. So a year and a half later, they call again. This time, the timing was right. I went to North Carolina. I was in Chapel Hill working for Carl Torbush as a special assistant to the head football coach. Within 3 weeks of being there prior to preseason camp starting, the person, Monk Tomlinson, who I was going to report to, he became sick. And so I was thrust into the role of managing and running everything. And I feel like I did a great job. People were happy with the work that I put in and the effort. And I had a lot of help. So I accepted that help. Towards the end of that season, I got another call from, this time the call came from Texas and Coach Brown, who was at Texas. There were some people who worked on his staff who I knew well. Greg Davis had worked at Georgia when I was there. I knew Jeff Mad Dog Madden and Cleve Bryan, and then Dell Drake also worked at Georgia. So when those guys called, this time I did listen to them, and the rest is history. About a month later, I was in Austin, Texas, and obviously it's an incredible place, incredible city, great university, football, and then I had a chance to work for Coach Brown and that great staff for 6 years. That was late 1999 through 2005. So we won a lot of football games, but really impacted a lot of young people and brought a lot of energy back to Texas football.
Wow, you've been under some great people. Speaking of Mad Dog Madden, I helped recruit Mad Dog out of St. Joseph's High School in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
And he played guard for us at Vanderbilt. He was a terrific kid and later a great strength coach. I'm glad that you and he we're really good friends. That makes me happy.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that Mad Dog went to Vanderbilt and that he he played there and had a great career, graduated from Vanderbilt, and you're right, he had a lot of success as a strength coach. I had an opportunity to go back to the University of Georgia. So Coach Brown, to tell you what kind of man he is, he saw the job description. He knew what my career goals and aspirations were to be an athletics director. He and Mr. Dodds, DeLoss, they both looked at it and they said, if you want to be an athletics director to go to Georgia, you need to take this job. It just said, make sure you got all of the right responsibilities and they're going give you an opportunity to grow and develop. And so at the end of that season, the '04 season, and at the end of recruiting, I left to return to Athens and had a chance there to work with Damon Evans and Dr. Carla Green Williams and President Michael Adams and that whole group. Obviously, I knew a lot of people there. It was going home for my wife and me. I love Athens. It's a great college town, a great community, had a lot of friends. And we did a lot of great things there. We won a couple of SEC championships, played in a couple of Sugar Bowls. We won a miracle tournament in basketball in Atlanta after the tornado hit the Georgia Dome one night in 2008. Baseball was going to the College World Series. We won national championships and swimming and diving, women's swimming and diving, and gymnastics won 5 in a row. Men's tennis won a national championship, equestrian. So we were having a lot of success across the board. Also, I was heavily involved in capital projects. So at that time, I worked with campus. We created a campus facility master plan and working with an architectural firm out of Boston called Sasaki. And we put that plan together, and it's great to see some of that plan being implemented, still being implemented today. But we got that plan together. We built a couple of facilities. We ended up doing over $100 million in construction. And at the end of 2010, I got a call with an opportunity to go back to the University of Texas. At that time, they were going through some change. I was up and down. I was actually working with Coach to help him possibly get someone else for the role that he was looking for. And then, I joke with him. He pulled a fast one on me. He got DeLoss involved with it and got DeLoss on me. And, a week later or 2 weeks later, my wife and I were moving back to Austin, a place than we liked. And we had a chance when I went there. I've always been a person who has done the best in the job that I had. I was not looking for other jobs. I go 10 toes in. As I recently heard someone say, I'm fully invested in doing the best in that job. I did not do a great job, or I don't do a good job of getting out and trying to network and politic and looking for something else. So I was busy working at Georgia when this came up. I was busy working at Texas. And obviously, when I went back, I was thinking, okay, it's going to be a lot of stability here. You had Mr. Dodds, who had been the AD there, approaching 30 years, Coach Brown in year 12, 13, or 14, Rick Barnes, Augie Garrido. Those coaches had been there a long time. Things seemed to be going well. And then 2 years later, change started to happen in Austin. And I was very fortunate through all of those changes that I was able to transition. I thank Steve Patterson and his wife, Yasmin, for giving me an opportunity based on my experiences at Georgia to move fully into administration at Texas. And I had a chance to work closely and be next door to Chris Polanski for 7 years. And she is an incredible resource, incredible professional who I got to, spend some quality time with and work with her closely. But after Steve left, Mike and Melinda Perrin came on board. Mike, I knew because I'd met him when I was at Texas the first time since he was a former letter winner. I worked with him and helped him with his transition into athletics. He was there for about 2 years. We had ups and downs, and obviously at major sports. So that was a difficult time. And then Chris Del Conte came in, and then Chris, or CDC as we call him, he is just absolutely amazing. He's doing some amazing things there, but he's great at engaging people. He's great at understanding the big picture, but also he pays attention to the details. So I really learned a lot from Chris. And again, I thank all of those guys for giving me an opportunity to stay during those transitions and giving me a chance to grow as I continued my time in Austin. And a great part of it was the relationships that I built from 2000 or from 1999 through 2005, and the relationships that I maintained while I was gone and then picked back up. All of those played a role in it. And I like to think that I was also doing a great job in my job. So I was not focused on, who the new AD was going to be or the results or the outcomes on the field. That's left up to coaches. My job was to make sure we provided a great environment and to make sure our facilities and operations were ready to go when stakeholders showed up.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you got to tell us a little bit about the Moody Center in Austin. Everybody says it's a terrific facility, and it's going to open, I think, this fall. Am I right, for basketball?
Well, for basketball, yes, but it actually opened about 2.5 weeks ago. So the project finished. But the Moody Center, going back to what I mentioned at Georgia, I had an opportunity when Steve Patterson came on board. We were looking at various projects, and we did, again, an athletic facility master plan to see where we would end up in the future and where we wanted to go. And one of the things is a new arena for basketball came up. The Frank Irwin Center had been around more than 40 plus years. It was an older facility, but had been incredible and great for Austin, had served the community really well. But there was an opportunity in that master plan. We were looking at various locations for it. So the former president, Greg Fenves, who is now the president at Emory, when he hired Chris, he told Chris that, hey, we need a new arena, and I'm not going to give you any money for it. So you need to go out and find somebody that would build the arena. We'll give you the location. We'll use the land. Let's go find out how to get this arena without costing the university or the taxpayers any money. And that master plan, I'm happy to say, the master plan that we put together, we did another small study with a group, and they came up with the same result in terms of the location of the Moody Center. So the Moody Center is basically located there on the west side of I-35, just south of the Mike A. Myers track in Austin. So the number of views and cars that go by there every day to access, we're able to use the same parking that's the old arena used. So the access was still great, and it was closer to campus. So we felt like that would help us with student attendance. That would help with having donors and people back on campus to see campus. So we really wanted to stay on campus. So Chris went out and with the president, and they started having conversations. And it's a public-private partnership with the approval of the Board of Regents to work with the OVG group. So the Oakview group. It's OVG runs and manages arenas around the country. So they partnered with, of all people, think about it, Matthew McConaughey, CP Presents, who puts on concerts, and of course, the Monster Live Nation. So that group got together and they've partnered with the university, and the university's obligation was to provide a pad-ready site for them to use. It's a 35-year agreement. You can go on, I'm sure you can research it and read about it. But the university gets 60 days where they control the arena. The other 305 days will be controlled by the Oakview group. They'll continue to bring in concerts. They will bring in events. But those 60 days for the university were very important. So President Fenves and Chris did a great job of making sure the university obviously continued to have a place to play basketball. So they got a new arena to play basketball in, as well as host all of the graduations. One unique thing that we had at Texas was the most of the high schools in the Austin area come to campus to host their commencement or their graduation ceremonies. So you get all of those families on campus on a regular basis, all of the commencement exercises for the university itself. So that accounts for probably, 10 to 12 of the 60 dates, plus the 40 men's and women's basketball games. And then the president has the ability to host some other events in there. Other than that, the Moody Center will be rocking and rolling like it has been. The unique thing about the structure of it is the ticketing systems are separate. So Texas will control all of the revenue from ticket sales for men's and women's basketball. They get to control pricing for all of concessions for events. So when people go into there, if you go in there for a concert, it's going to have different pricing than you would have for a basketball game at Texas, simply because Chris is going to work to make that fan experience better and keep the prices affordable for families to come. So that part is great for the university. The men's and women's basketball teams have a great new venue to play in. The city of Austin has a great new arena that will continue to bring in, obviously, incredible acts. Live Nation controls about 90% of the tour market. So people want to get to Austin because it's the live music capital of the world. And it's a place where people or artists are going to want to play, and promoters. So Austin is going to be on that stop, and they'll get exposed to campus. So, but it was it was great. The pandemic, as much as it impacted, obviously a lot of, had a huge negative impact across this world on that particular project, because the university is controlled, reports to the governor. The governor did not stop construction that was happening on campus versus some construction in the rest of Austin. So for them to pull out as much dirt as they pulled out, they were able to speed up their time frame and save a lot of time, because during the height of COVID, no one was on campus. So those dump trucks, we could sit in the stadium and see them lined up. Imagine 100 dump trucks just lined up, going up and down and out of the site, up and down, and making the turn where it may have taken them an hour and a half before. Now they were making that turn in 30 minutes and getting back to the site because no one was on the road. No students were on campus. Interstate 35 was basically empty, no rush hour traffic. So they were able to just get a lot of dirt out of there and to move that project along.
Wow, what a great story. Hey, Mr. AD, go build me a nice arena. I'll give you the land, but I'm not going to give you any money and no taxpayers' dollars.
Incredible.
I mean, what a task.
Yeah, no, it was, like I said, for them to pull it off, it was great. But again, it's in a great location. It is still, it's on campus, so practically downtown, easy access. You don't have to build any parking because the parking is already there. It was a surface lot. Now, that surface lot was important. It was about 395 parking spaces that were for tailgating. So that was a little rough. Plus, they probably spent $1 million. We spent probably $1.5 million relocating trees, live oaks that were in there as well. So
wow.
So it was a task, but that's a lot easier to do that than to replace buildings. So if you had to replace buildings and to do those things, it would have taken longer. So that site ends up working out well, and it's there in the athletics footprint. And men's and women's basketball, along with rowing, are getting a training facility that's going to be next door to it. So it's less than 90 feet from the entrance. And then the locker rooms in the Moody Center for men's and women's basketball, those are dedicated to men's and women's basketball only. But it is a great project.
Wow, that's really, really exciting. Arthur, on your way up, you worked hard. You really did. You earned everything that you got. Tell me, what advice would you give a younger Arthur Johnson on the way up?
I would say it starts by doing the best that you can do at your current job, and also always be respectful and mindful that other people have jobs that they're trying to get done and they're trying to get accomplished. So if you don't do your job, you might impact the experience or you might impact someone else doing their job. My advice in terms of something that I did not do well, it was networking outside of my social circle more and probably doing some more professional development, but only do that if it doesn't take away from your current job. All of the jobs that I had, I did have a couple of people helping me get this one once I got into the process, but I was not out actively looking for jobs on a regular basis early on. I was trying to do great where I was and built a reputation that, when Texas or when North Carolina called the first time, it was because of the work I had done at Georgia. Then when North Carolina called, it was because of the work that I had done at Georgia and what I was doing at Arizona State based on word of mouth. And then when Texas called again, those same people that I worked with, again, we had worked together at Georgia. They saw me as an graduate student working in the business, and they trusted me enough, not only my work, but they also trusted my character and trusted that I would go in and do the right thing, to make that kind of recommendation to their boss.
No matter how well we think we're prepared as associate ADs or deputy ADs or whatever, there's a real learning curve when you become the director of athletics. Tell us about what it's like to be a first-year athletic director and what it's like to come to a new school and all the things that you've been doing since you got to Temple.
Well, I'll say it is like drinking from a fire hose. It is a lot. It's different for me than my previous jobs. Obviously, I was not the athletics director, but also I went back to communities where I was familiar with people. I knew my way around, in terms of travel. Now I'll say now Google Maps and our phones are awesome, so that helps me with getting around a whole lot easier than it would have been 20 years ago. Finding places and going, getting out and about, getting lost and being able to get back to where you want to be. But nothing can can prepare you for it. It's a 24/7 job. All different types of stakeholders are coming at you, both internally and externally. And as Coach Brown would say, in my previous roles, I could make a lot of recommendations. In this one, I have to make a lot of decisions. So I got others who make recommendations to me, and then you got to decide how you want to move forward. Now, one of the lessons that I like to teach our student athletes, or I talk with them about, the great thing is I'm not doing what they have to do in competition. In competition, they have to make a decision when they're on a fast break. They can't look over to the coach and get feedback. They got to make a play. When the ball is snapped in football and the receiver's running this route and they got to check, they got to know what to do. They do it instinctively. It happens, quickly. We do get a little bit more time. I do have the ability 90% of the time to say, okay, let me think about it. Or gather some people together, try to get some feedback from others before rendering a decision. So that part is very helpful. But ultimately, you're taking in all of this data from different places, whether you're researching on your own or getting feedback from colleagues or from staff. And you have to make you have to make decisions versus recommendations. That's the biggest thing. And it's whether you are working with faculty and staff on campus, another colleague that's on the cabinet, or a donor that was or a former student athlete that played here in the 60s, or one that played here in the late, in 2 or 3 years ago, and everyone in between. Also, you work with just so many different stakeholders. So, as you know from your time in the C, you could be dealing with a student athlete issue, and then 30 minutes later, you're dealing with a donor issue, or after that, you're dealing with a conference issue or something that's going on in the business, and you got to understand it all and try to compute or make decisions based on the knowledge that you have.
Very true. And you make a lot of decisions as a director of athletics, and unfortunately, nobody bats 1,000.
Right.
So what we do is we take the information that we have, we give it some good thought, and we communicate it to the people around us and get their opinions. But then you have to make the final decision.
Right.
You have been around some excellent people. One of my great friends is Vince Dooley. You've been around Mac Brown, DeLoss Dodds. I'm trying to think of some of the other greats that you've been around, probably Greg McGarity, Damon Evans. What are some of the characteristics that those leaders have? Now, they have their own, they're all friends of yours and mine. We know they all have different personalities. But what are some of the common traits that all those really good leaders have?
Across the board, I will say when you throw or you add Dr. Kevin White or Coach Brown, they care about young people. So that's the start. They care about the young people who represent us or represent their institutions, and always keeping that in mind. I've also been very fortunate. They were all people who wanted to do right by the staff. So when they were making hard decisions when it came to the people, trying to make sure even when you needed to deliver news that was not such good news, that they wanted to make sure you were compassionate, but being fair. So being graceful and making really tough decisions, because those decisions were going to impact people beyond the person that you were talking to. They were all very engaging in their own way. They had a special way about them in terms of how they operate. Then if I add Coach Ray Goff to that mix, he was one who, he cared about everyone. He and Coach Brown had a lot of similarities when it came to understanding and wanting to everyone that they've worked with in the past, being inclusive, making sure that they were felt welcomed. They've never met a stranger, so they were very good with visiting with people, signing autographs, taking pictures, until the last person wanted to leave. They were just very open and understanding of their time. And I would always hear Coach Brown say, after he signed autographs for 8 hours on an autograph day, said, this job belongs to the people. And if these people want to wait in line to get my autograph, if they think it's that important, then I need to sit here. I'm not going to make the coaches or the players sit here for 8 hours, but he would literally sit there for 8 or 9 hours and sign autographs for the people who were in line waiting, and be as patient, taking all of the pictures of the people that came along. I had a chance to see Coach Dooley do some of that as well. Even when I went back to work, he was the same way in the community. When he'd see people, if he traveled with us and went to games, they were just very accommodating with people.
That's That's really neat. Arthur, I know that you are well versed in name, image, and likeness. Can you tell us about what your thoughts are about name, image, and likeness?
First of all, I think it's a great opportunity for student athletes to obviously monetize or get some value for that. We got some unintended consequences that are, changing the landscape in our business, and we're going to have to get those addressed. But initially, even when it was passed last July, there are three things I thought that were very good for name, image, and likeness. Number one, the financial literacy education. So, as you know, most departments already did that. It's just now that kids are paying attention to it more than ever before. I mean, most institutions, we were having those programs trying to get kids engaged. They weren't as interested in it, or they didn't pay attention to it as much. Now they pay attention to it more because they're interested in it. So the education piece when it comes to financial literacy. The second part is their brand. They're paying attention to their brand because they realize that their brand has value. Prior to name, image, and likeness, as you may know from your time, especially as social media started becoming so prevalent, sometimes our young people didn't realize that basically their social media is a digital fingerprint, and footprint that will follow them forever and can have negative consequences, whether they're reposting something that's really inappropriate, or even posting something themselves that's really inappropriate. Now, because of the name, image, and likeness, they're more aware of that and trying to protect that brand so that they can monetize it. The other part is the paying attention to the legal documents. So when you talk about these agreements, when they sign these agreements, they have to follow the rules that are within, or follow the items in that agreement and accomplish, or the best way to put it, they need to follow the agreement. Bottom line, you have a contract, you got to follow it. So if you got these things, you got to do it. So now they get a better understanding of that sooner. So I think those three things out of it's great. Now, as we get into, we're reading about and hearing about collectives. So collectives, it is a game changer. Now, while, obviously the contracts are not public, but we got to go by what we're hearing right now. And some of the numbers that we're hearing are staggering. In some cases, not surprising, but they're still staggering. And the question is that sustainable in our business? Is it sustainable for a team? Is it going to disrupt a locker room because someone who is coming in who hasn't proven anything yet is going to come in and, they're getting paid a whole lot more than someone who is not, and it may not, and it's outside of the spirit of the rule. The spirit of the rule is for you to go out, and while you can go monetize it, to have specific duties that you go to earn that versus pay for play. So what we're seeing and the way it's coming across is that it's pay for play, and you got young people on teams. You combine that with the restrictions lifted as a result of the transfer portal. Now we have free agency in our business, and that is not good. It is not good for, I think, the young people who are in it long term. It's not good for them. It may be good for some of them short term, and that's what they're thinking. But long term, it may not be as good for them, and it's not good for us in this business because it is not sustainable, in my opinion.
Well said.
Thank
Very, very well said. Thank you. I tell you what, that owl behind you scares the devil out of me. That is a mean-looking owl.
Yeah, that was Pat Kraft's owl, and it's a reminder. I really like it because it's a reminder that the owls are always watching. So it's a reminder to our student athletes. It's a reminder to our coaches and staff, and certainly to me, that you're always being watched. At Texas, it was the eyes of Texas are upon you. And they had this Longhorn. We had this Longhorn in the building. And when you walked, no matter which direction you walked in, it looked like he was staring at you. So we would always use that with recruits and their families to say, hey, that, no matter where you go, we'll have some eyes on you. And in today's environment, it's a great reminder for our student athletes because camera phones are everywhere.
That's right. Yeah, the eyes of Texas are upon you until Gabriel blows his horn.
Yes.
Absolutely. One of the great fight songs.
Yes.
In all of college athletics.
Yeah.
Well, Arthur, congratulations on being named Director of Athletics at Temple. You will do an amazing job there. Thank you for making time to be on our podcast. You were terrific, and a lot of young people will certainly get a lot out of your observations on so many different subjects.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. And I'll say one last thing that I did not mention, Gene. I think it's very important for young people to understand being aligned with your university administration. So as you get into these roles and these opportunities, understand that even at Texas, as much ink as we got and as much ink and attention that we'll get here, we're not bigger than the universities that we work for or that we represent. And and what we do impacts what happens on those campuses. So the more that we're integrated into those campuses, the more buy-in and the more support you'll get. And remember, that's where our student athletes, contrary to popular belief, they spend more of their time over there than they do with us with the NCAA limits that we have. So thank you again for having me on, and looking forward to being here for a long time. And Vic, hopefully you'll have me back on the fly-in.
We're going to come see you too.
Okay, I'd love to see you. Okay,
all right. We're going to do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arthur.
You're welcome. Take care.
Right. We're out of time on this week's On the Fly College Edition. I'm your host, Gene DeFilippo. Thanks for your time this time, and we'll see you next time.